Welcome, everyone. If you are just now getting the notification that we are live, I am going to give it just a couple of minutes here so you can enjoy this calming hold music until we will be joined here by Jeremy and Nils. That will be going through the first annual TruPresence Franchise Marketing Benchmark Report. It's a bit of a sneak peek of the upcoming report that is set to publish in early 2023, and we're very excited to tell you about it. So we are going to just give it a couple of minutes here. For those of you just getting the notification, welcome. And we'll be starting in about 2 minutes with Jeremy and Nils. And again, for those of you just logging in, welcome. We will be kicking this off with Jeremy from TruPresence and Nils with WooRank in just a minute here. So grab your coffee or whatever beverage you are enjoying, depending on your time zone, and we will be jumping in here in just a minute. All right, well, welcome everybody. So I did want to introduce you here. We got Jeremy at TruPresence, and we are being joined by Nils. Welcome, you two. Kicking this off, this conversation about the soon-to-be published Franchise Marketing Benchmark Report. So I did just want to introduce you two for those who have not joined any of these TruPresence Talks webinars. Can you guys just give a quick intro, what you do, and what we'll be talking about today? Jeremy.
Yeah, go ahead, Nils. Go ahead.
Okay. So hi, I'm Nils. I co-founded WooRank, and I'm still today working a lot on the WooRank product, both from a technical point of view, but as well as on the product. Now, WooRank, for those of you who don't know, is a website optimization tool, an SEO tool as well. And throughout our history, we've been looking at lots of websites in an automated way, obviously through crawlers, millions and millions of websites, acquired lots and lots of data, terabytes of data on those websites to provide WooRank as a tool. But it does create an interesting sort of new use case for us, that we're sitting on a bunch of data, a bunch of historic data also about those millions of websites. And from that, we can kind of create new products and new insights for new products And TruPresence is one of those new use cases that builds on top of the data we've been acquiring for many years and are still doing today, and even increasing those numbers. So yep, that's me.
Perfect. That was a perfect lead in. Thanks, Nils, and thanks for being here with me. So, hi everybody. Jeremy Leduc. I head up TruPresence. Both TruPresence and WooRank are both divisions of Bridgeline, our parent company, and TruPresence is our franchise-specific brand. So we have many different things, but to Nils's point, one of the things we've done and that we're going to talk about here is the use case that Nils just referred to, which is we've taken WooRank, and WooRank audits websites. It collects that data, and it's collected just vast amounts of information related to the SEO performance of websites. And we've targeted that tool to franchising, and that's what we're here to talk about. So Nils, I was actually looking back in time, and it'll be coming up your 2-year anniversary here at Bridgeline coming up in like January, February timeframe. So we've been working together now for almost 2 years. And I remember when we first met, I came to you and said, I love WooRank. It's a great tool. I'd like to talk to you about franchising, and that got the discussion going. That has brought us here today. So let me kind of set the frame for what we're going to be talking about here today. The first annual benchmark report is the fact that we've gone out there, and let me get to the next screen, and we have started what we call the Franchise Data Digest. Okay, and so we've taken the WooRank software and we've gone out there and we've analyzed over 1,400 franchise-specific websites across the 75 different data attributes that WooRank covers and looks at. As it relates to the performance of a website, mostly on-page, so on-page attributes of a website, some off-page. And we've compiled all that information and we've been analyzing it. But to get there, I'm going to take about 60 seconds here and tell a little bit of story about how we actually got to this data digest and how we got to this benchmark report and the things we're going to be looking at. The benchmark report's great. We've got a sneak peek here today. And then in a few months from now, we'll actually release the official report itself that you can download, and it'll have even more information. But we have some of this information and we wanted to share it today. But let me just explain how we actually got to this report. So this here is a standard WooRank report across those 75 different data attributes. And so what we've done is across 1,400 franchise websites, we have gone and analyzed every one of them like this across content and indexing and data structure and performance and all these things along the right that you see here, 75 different data attributes. And we've compiled all that. The really neat thing is when Nils and I first met, and I'm kind of giving you now a sneak peek of something in the future, the next benchmark report that we do is actually what I actually told Nils, I love WooRank, but have you ever thought about pointing WooRank at the franchise space, and specifically at the franchise space URLs, which are typically the domain name / something, right? The location typically. And he said, yeah, we've thought about that, but we just didn't get there. That use case is very interesting. We just haven't gotten there in our roadmap. So we accelerated that roadmap over the last year, given that we have TruPresence as one of our brands. And this location analytics is now available in the WooRank software, where you can actually analyze per location the SEO performance of each location. That's very, very unique. We have not found that anywhere else. And you'll see on the right-hand side here where you could actually, in this case, what we did was we actually took the WooRank scoring across almost 300 locations for this particular franchise system and then mapped that out. So that's kind of the backstory on how Nils and I have come together over the last almost 2 years now to work together to make both WooRank and TruPresence come together in that use case that he was talking about. So let's kind of dive into today's discussion. Thank you for letting me share that story. It's been a lot of fun. Today, what we're doing is, again, we've created this benchmark report, and this website's actually live. You can actually go to TruPresence.com, and on the front page, on the homepage of that website, you'll see the data digest, and you can click to it. And this is an interactive web page on our website where you can actually use some filters along the left to look at these websites that are in this index. And if you're a franchise here today, first, thanks for being here. We're excited to have you. And second, if you're not in this index, you could actually add yourself by hitting the add URL. So you could add yourself to this index, because we'll continue doing this and we'll continue analyzing these websites, and we'll continue growing. Right now, you guys may know there's roughly 4,000. There's some reports to say there's 3,000, some say there's 5,000 franchise brands in the United States. This report here is based on 1,400, which is a pretty good, representation of franchise systems. So it's a pretty good representation statistically, and we're pretty excited to have that many in the index. But we will be expanding on that. And so the next time we do this, we'll have even more brands in there. So let's jump in and let's talk about what we want to talk about, this benchmark report. These are the different areas that we've analyzed. So we broke down some, what industries are most prevalent in this data set of 1,400 websites. And then we started looking at who are the top performers that we found. What are the things they're doing right, which is really the meat of this. What can we learn, from the franchise systems who have great websites, and what can we learn from the websites that are not performing as well, which means we need to watch out for those things and we need to get better at those. And then we found a lot of other fun information because, again, we're tracking all of this, so we were able to see a lot of this across those websites. So it's been a lot of fun looking at this data. So let's jump in. So the first thing to note is just what makes up this group, right? And the graph on the left is really the most is the important one. And if you know franchising, this makes a lot of sense, right? So 26% is home services. Okay, so keep in mind a bit more framing when it comes to SEO performance. Home services, as you can see, healthcare, hotels, commercial, professional services, fitness, personal care. So that's this whole spectrum right here. So that makes a lot of sense because a lot of those organizations need big SEO and organic presences, right? So if you're a home services business, you need to tell a deep local story, and you need SEO to do that. Versus, if you're a quick serve restaurant, you don't have to tell a huge story, right? You don't have to have details about what you do. So this makes a lot of sense to me, this whole first column, and that's what represents a lot of these the franchises in our index. So let's go to, now this is an interesting one, Nils, and I want to pull you in because this really speaks to the heart of WooRank, right? And the WooRank score. So we saw earlier, a representation of the WooRank report, and on there, which is really important, is the ultimate score that we come up with, right? And this kind of shows us overall across those 1,400 websites where everybody fell. So we've got about 10% on the pie chart on the right who need some pretty critical help SEO wise. That means they've got some errors going. We've got 55% who are scoring in the yellow zone in the middle. And then we've got 35% who are scoring pretty well. So Nils, let me ask, so break down the WooRank score and just what exactly this means, the red, the yellow, and green, and the fact that these franchises are falling, in those buckets.
Yep, sure. So the Wurang score is essentially a score that is an accumulation of a bunch of pieces of data that we gather for each website, each franchise in this case, franchise websites. Um, so we gather all that data, and then for each piece of data, each data field, we apply a score per field. And then depending on how important this data field is when it comes to SEO, being out there, having a website on the internet, and making it visible and findable for people. So take, for instance, a title tag. I know it's probably the simplest example, but it's still one of the most important things you need to look out for when building web pages. It's what people see. Generally, Google does some of their own magic these days. But anyway, like if someone searches for a topic that you have something to tell about, title tag is one of the first things they'll see if your site pops up. So, for instance, title tag is something we gather as a data piece. We see if the title tag is well optimized. Is it long enough? Is it not too long? Are there no errors in there? Things like that. And then we define, okay, this is good, or there's work to be done, or it's just plain bad. Like you're missing a title tag, for instance. We add a weight to this particular data field, and then in the end, we look at all the data pieces we have gathered, multiply them by their weight, and then count them all up, and that gives the final score. What's interesting here is, well, a bell curve is what is to be expected. That's not only looking at franchises. Like if we look at the entire internet, that's more or less the same visual you'd get. It makes sense. There's always, smaller few who do really bad, a smaller few who do really good, and then you kind of have that curve in the middle. I would say that zoomed into franchises, this curve is leaning a little more to the right, which is obviously a good thing. So franchises are already doing better than I would say the average internet website or a group of internet websites. But nonetheless, there's always room for improvement, as you can see here. So when you're in that orange category, that means you're already doing well, and I guess we can see you're doing, like, it's important to you that you have a website. Otherwise you wouldn't be in the orange part. For red, you might argue, okay, these people probably don't even care about their website. I don't know, but that's what it feels like to me. But yeah, I mean, there's still the largest chunk in the orange part. So there's still work to be done to get that over the line and try to get it in the green area. And even in green, I mean, there's zero websites scoring 100%. So there's always room to do better.
Yeah, well, and that's not easy, right? To score 100% in Google's eyes, which is a lot of what we're looking at, right? Is what is Google looking at, and and our algorithms, of course, take that into consideration. I love to hear the fact that this is leaning more towards the right. I will say there's a couple driving factors. Having been in franchise a long time, and a franchisee myself, franchising has a secret weapon to me, which is the fact that we have local presence, right? So not only do we have local presence, and you can use that to your advantage, right? So drive local presence across 50 or 100 or a couple hundred locations, and that's going to improve your overall presence, your brand online. But you've also got local owners who do care, right? So there's constant pressure on the brand overall from everybody, and sometimes from hundreds or thousands of franchisees saying, hey, we need to get better. So I'm sure those drive towards the fact that that franchising. Nils, we haven't actually compared this to the bell curve across the 50 million websites that we track with WooRank.
Yep.
But it's interesting to see.
Yeah, from my gut feel, I would say, like, if you look at the internet, I think the curve would peak rather around the 55 point, where here it's 65. So and it's easier to get from, like, for one website to get from a score of 50 to 55 than from 70 to 75. So the more you need to move up the ranks, the harder it gets, like in video games. But again, yeah, it does paint a picture that franchises are already very much aware that an internet presence is very important to them. That's my personal conclusion by looking at these.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good to hear. So let's jump into some of that criteria. That's really, one of the biggest reasons we did this work, right, was not only for our own customers, but for in general, what would a benchmark report look like, where we're scoring the entire franchise industry. So let's look at some of that criteria. But before we do that, let's actually have a little bit of fun and highlight some of the franchise systems that we found to be doing exceptionally well. So this is the top 20 list, and what you'll see here is this is our software analyzing these websites and then ranking them, and you'll see that starting from number 1 through 20, the scores are from 89 to 84, and these are some of the franchise systems that scored highest as we went out there. There was nothing human involved here, right? This is our technology analyzing 1,400 websites, and these are the 20 franchise systems. And there's probably no surprise. Everybody out here we know there's some great franchise systems on here, and everybody's working hard. But a lot of these systems, are doing really, really well with the scores almost hitting 90. That means across those 75 different data attributes, that means a lot of these systems are looking at each one of those and just incrementally improving on them. So this was fun to see, and it's great to see, and it's great to highlight some great brands here, and them doing well. But let's jump in, and let's jump into something really important here, which is these are some of the criteria. You've heard us talking about, okay, yeah, we're analyzing websites. What exactly are we analyzing, right? So now we're digging into, these are the actual things that we're looking at. And we're starting with the criteria that was most influential in getting that score up, getting your score from a 60 to a 70 to an 80 and higher. These are the things that we found across all 1,400 websites that drove those scores higher, right? So being mobile compatible, right? That drove the score higher, right? Making sure you've got positive, you got a lot of backlinks, things like that. So these are some of the criteria. And in fact, if you actually want your report, if you want this report that we keep talking about across these 75 data attributes, just hit me up, and we can get you one of those, or you can go to the TruPresence site and get that. But Nils, let's jump in here and talk about these criteria and just how hard it is sometimes to analyze a site, come up with this score, and then say, okay, now you got to fix this. How do you go fix these things?
Yeah, and I think from a high level, if we look at the biggest contributors to a positive score, and just looking at the top 3, there's another interesting picture we can see here, because it basically more or less sums up 3 very important areas of work when it comes to improving a website. So at the top, we have backlink score. Like, still to this day, I mean, we all more or less know how Google works high level. Unfortunately, they're not very transparent in their algorithms, but we still know, like, if you get references from other like backlinks from other websites pointing into your websites, and the better that website is, or the more trustworthy that website is, the more that link is valued by Google. That's still key to how SEO works, how the internet, or how Google works, and how Google ranks. So backlink score, remains one of the top priorities. But then on the second position, mobile friendliness. So making sure that your website is not only accessible to people sitting behind their computer, but also on their mobile phone, especially, I guess, in the franchise space, like people wherever they are, like something like flat tire, they need to have a solution quick. Like franchises would be the first to show up when you're searching, like, yeah, someone needs to help me over here, right? So mobile friendliness, super important. And then thirdly, mixed content. Maybe people are not super familiar, but this is in the security space, like making sure your website is, and SSL security is also in this list, but making sure you have your HTTPS right, so your SSL certificates, but at the same time, make sure that everything on your web pages, on your website, is served in a secure way to your customers, to your users. That's another key point of value, like for any website. So backlinks, mobile, and security, I would say, are three very important things to improve on a website.
Yeah. Well, and title tag, you said it's a very simple example, but it's critical. It actually made the list, so it's number 10 on the
Yeah,
list.
of course. I'm not saying that any outside of the top three
Yeah.
are not important, and even outside of this top 10. But yeah, top three just totally makes sense. But then title tags, or at number 4, headings, like the structure of a web page should be easy to navigate for a user. It just has to make sense. Like, yeah, the table of contents of a book, same for a web page. Like if
Yeah.
people get lost in the wall of text that you're serving them, then it's not going to help your website neither. Yeah, custom 404s. Like if for some reason people end up on a broken page, that can always happen. But making sure that you kind of have a solution, like provide people links to go elsewhere on your website, and instead of this standard server error thing that scares people away. No, like if you have a nice looking for a 4 page with a couple of links to areas into your website, at least hopefully you won't lose that visitor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect example of, I'd like to take a moment and just talk about, just this criteria and how do you actually execute on it, right? I mean, how do you go fix this stuff? And obviously, as you know, what we're showing here is just knowing this is really important, right? So, that's why TruPresence relies heavily on the WooRank technology to actually analyze a website, because that creates the roadmap, right? And that's what we're showing
Yep.
here is this is a roadmap overall, but that creates the roadmap of what do you need to go fix. And over all the years I've been, working with franchise systems on websites and SEO, it certainly takes a team to go fix these things, right? Some of these things are easy, right? If you have access to the back end of your website, right in, the editor, you should be able to go fix some of these things, like a title tag. Some of these other things, though, get more complicated. So you need access to, a web developer or somebody, who understands and is involved in hosting the website. So it certainly takes a team effort. It takes understanding what the roadmap looks like, which is analysis, and it takes content developers, and it takes hosting providers and web developers, because each one of these, some of these items are technical and some are not.
Yep.
So,
And also, and I've fought for this battle before, like breaking down the barriers between development teams, marketing teams, making sure they can work together without friction. That's, I mean, in today's, well, probably already for many years, but in today's world, it's super important that indeed, if you need to change something to a website that might need a developer for some, like setting up an SSL certificate, not always as easy depending on the CMS you're using. That's not something that should take weeks and project managers and you name it. Like, no, like let marketers work with developers directly to get those things fixed in a shorter amount of time. That will only make your entire business work better.
Yeah, no, I like that breaking down the walls, like you said. I mean, if one of these things has been on your list for 3 months, that's a really long time. You could just have somebody go talk directly to the technical person and see if they can figure it out. So I think that's a great point. So let's move on to the next chart, which then talks to us about the biggest opportunities, which is the other aspect of a roadmap, right? The two major aspects, of a WooRank roadmap is what are you doing right? Great. What are you not doing so well? And you got to go fix, right? So that's equally important. And so we've got on here, as you can see, traffic, backscore, image optimization. That is always a huge one, huge one. And in franchising, I know we all know there's the challenge of corporate contributing content to the website, including images, but also allowing franchisees to come in and either making sure your CMS can optimize an image, or training the franchisees to optimize that image, or otherwise you'll end up with franchisees uploading giant, images, and that ends up causing huge problems from an SEO perspective.
Yeah,
So
and yeah, I think image optimization specifically kind of ties into what I said before. Like, try to make sure developers and marketeers can work together. This is the perfect example of that. Like, there's so much new innovation on image optimization alone, like new file formats, things like that. Like, I guess by now most websites have CDN, so that's good. Like, yeah, that's also somewhat oldish technology. Lots of innovation still going on that front, but I guess every website these days at least uses some form of a CDN, so that's good. But now it's still a responsibility for whoever works on a website, like not only adds text but also images, to then use that technology to the fullest and make sure that an image is well optimized, has the right size. Like, if you show a small image, the file size doesn't have to, or the image size doesn't have to be 10,000 pixels wide. Like, no, shrink it down. Like, if you want to show it for 1,000 pixels wide, then make it 1,000 pixels wide. So things like these, use newer file formats that are much better in compression, give you smaller file sizes. I mean, in a way, it's common sense, but it's still one of the criteria that contribute to the worst scores. It's still something that people kind of, I don't know, like, don't put as much attention into, and it's super important. We talked in great lengths about core web vitals in the past. I mean, we still do. It's one of the most important changes that Google has made in the last 12 to 18 months to their algorithm, and have been transparent about. This is a very important item in that context, like having good images, like having a well-performing web page as soon as a visitor lands on your website. Super important. And then, besides that, in these two lists, we see a lot of Instagram, LinkedIn. I guess that's a whole other area. But being active on social media, I guess for a lot of industries, makes a lot of sense to try to not only have your own website, but also speak to your customers or potential customers in places where they probably spend a lot of time, like social media platforms.
Yeah. So we're going to dig in on two things there. First, we've got some folks asking what CDN is. So if you could quickly explain that, then I've got another question.
Yeah, sure. So in a nutshell, it's a little technical, but basically, in a standard setup, like a website is hosted on a web server. Like, when I visit a web page, the URL is turned into an IP, like the numbers thingy, which then points to a server that runs some software that can give me the HTML back, and then my browser on my end renders that HTML into a web page. That's how, in the simplest form, how websites work. A CDN kind of sits in between me and my web server, but it's a bunch of nodes spread across the globe. So generally, that's you buy that service from a bigger company. There's Cloudflare, Amazon Web Services has their own CDN. There's Fastly. I mean, there's a bunch of providers that provide CDN services. And basically what they do, so they have servers all around the world, and they try to serve your visitor from its closest location to that visitor. So let's say I'm in Belgium, they might have a server in Belgium or maybe in the Netherlands, like close to me. And when I go to your website, I first hit that CDN node, let's say in Belgium, who might not have that page yet, like doesn't know about that page. Like then it will ask my server, okay, give me the content for the HTML for this web page, goes to the CDN node, comes back to me. So that's the slow part. But if I or anybody else in my general area that hits that same node now requests that same page, it doesn't have to go back to my server anymore. It can straight serve the web page from that node because it's somehow cached in that CDN node. That's in rough terms how CDNs work.
So CDN service is above and beyond hosting, right? There's hosting, and then there's CDN, which the CDN service is bringing the website closer to your customer, right?
Yep.
Which couldn't be more critical, right? To especially Google, who wants to see that web page served up very quickly, and they want that experience to be, just phenomenal for the end user. So let's talk about that, because you brought up Core Web Vitals, and I wanted to bring that up somewhere. So now's the perfect time to bring that up. So just very quickly, just describe, Core Web Vitals. It was a major update from Google. It's got 3 major components, and all of it relates to the experience of a user, right? And so WooRank, of course, has incorporated Core Web Vitals into its reporting because it's that important that you make sure you understand. So a couple great nuggets out of this is, if you're a growing franchise and you've got lots of locations now, either nationally or internationally, I think a CDN, looking into that and talking to your tech team about that makes a lot of sense, because by nature, franchises are in many, many locations. So getting those websites to your customers and serving them up even faster, I could think it'd be a great thing for you to think about. But also, if you're not, if you haven't really looked into Core Web Vitals yet, I really think that's something you should. And so, Nils, give us just, I know it's not the easiest thing, but to try to nutshell Core Web Vitals for us, just to make sure everybody understands what that is.
Yeah, so I mean, I can talk for hours about Core Web Vitals, which I've already done in other webinars in the past. But it's basically 3 metrics that Google is watching when users are visiting websites. And those 3 metrics kind of are geared around how an end user, a visitor, experiences a web page. And even I think their update was called the page experience update. So it's all about when a user searches for something like a certain keyword or a text string, like fix a tire, how to fix a tire, things like that. And they serve results to that searcher. When the searcher then clicks a web page, lands on that web page, it's all about, okay, how's the experience to that end user? So it's mostly related to performance. So is the page loading fast enough? But then even closer into, are there, like, during the loading of the web page, is everything snappy, or are certain items, like big images, for instance, again, images, are they suddenly popping up because it took some time to load, and then everything gets pushed down on the page because suddenly that image jumps in? Like, that's a bad user experience. Like, you already started reading, maybe suddenly an image drops in, everything gets pushed down, you lose track of what you were reading. It's those kind of things. Like, yeah, making sure a web page is snappy so that a visitor has a good experience visiting that web page. That's what Google is looking out for. And the more you increase the score on those metrics, they take that into account in their algorithm. So it's not the only thing, of course. There's thousands of metrics that Google is, or heuristics that Google is taking into account when ranking websites for certain keywords. But this is definitely an important one of them. And yeah, with WooRank, we offer a bunch of tools to improve them, to monitor them, etc. But yeah, it's one of the most important things on their minds right now, and should be on everyone's minds right now when having a website.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Core Web Vitals is critical. I know that if you do happen to go off and get a report like WooRank report on your website, that won't include Core Web Vitals, right? Because Core Web Vitals actually has to analyze the traffic on the website itself. Whereas a lot of the things we're talking about here, we could analyze all of this just looking at the website. Whereas Core Web Vitals, you actually have to see somebody experience the website. So it takes in our case, it actually takes some JavaScript on the website so that we can actually track users. But Core Web Vitals, I think, is critical. I love the fact that you brought the CDN in. I think that's great. So let's keep going. We've got some fun statistics here coming up here from the benchmark report. And all of it's related, and I think it's interesting. But let's jump to the next slide here, which is, as we analyzed all these 1,400 websites, we were able to see what kind of technology stack, right? What MarTech stack a lot of franchise systems have, and that's been very interesting to see. Obviously, I'm sure you see a lot of names you know, but it was interesting to me. A couple things I noted here is that I expected WordPress, I expected Drupal. In working with franchise systems for many years, there's a lot of companies out there who have built custom plugins so that these systems can handle the multi-site management component of franchising. But I was surprised to see, on the complete different side of the spectrum, like an Adobe Experience Manager or a Sitecore. Those are big enterprise level CMSs. Those are heavy lifts. And I was surprised to see such large CMSs, but that's great if franchise systems are out there effectively using them. And it's interesting to see some new CMSs, on the scene, like the HubSpot CMS, which is a fairly newer CMS. But the bottom line is you got to make sure that the CMS, powering the website itself is something, that's working for you, and really understands, at a native level, that multi-site management, right? That we all face in franchising, which is, something on the spectrum of, is corporate driving all the content? Are you allowing franchisees to drive content and contribute content? Is there some type of hybrid in the middle where corporate owns, some of the content and franchisees own some of the content? That's an area that I've spent a lot of time in over the years, is working with franchise systems on making sure that CMS is addressing that. And Nils, I'm assuming from your background, you want to make sure that the CMS is something that you can go in and effectively manage across those 75 attributes that WooRank looks at. Can the CMS let you do these things and with ease? Because somebody's got to go in and actually work on that roadmap we talked about. So let's keep going. There's another interesting aspect of franchising, which is every franchise site, most franchise sites, I would suspect, have a map on it, right, for the locations. And that's been an interesting space over the years. And I was very surprised, Nils, to see that Google Maps is still so prevalent. I mean, we're talking about across all these different websites that we've looked at. Google is still so prevalent, whereas Mapbox, I know that we've been a part of helping some systems move from Google to Mapbox just because Google has become pretty cost prohibitive as a map. But if you've got a map on your website and that map is driving your location finder, so somebody can come in to the corporate site, use the map, say, I'm in Boise, Idaho, and pull that up. A real nugget to take away is that Google Maps, which is clearly the leader here, isn't your only solution with that. There are definitely other solutions and just as viable. But like I said, I was surprised because I know Google has become pretty costly to be that map on the franchise website. So, and maps, that's a huge place for conversion too, right? Is making sure that experience is good, which is getting people to the corporate site, getting them onto that location finder, getting them to their location as quickly as possible. So it's a critical part of the website. And I was just surprised to see that Google is leading the way. Of course, Google leading anything in the online isn't surprising, but I'm just surprised more companies haven't looked at some of the other solutions out there. So the next one was, so we're going to get into a couple slides here, few slides about the rest of that MarTech stack that I mentioned. So, there's lots of marketing technology out there. We as a team, as we analyzed all this, we were interested to see what other technology our franchise is using. And I just thought bringing that to the table here as a part of this sneak peek would be interesting, because I know, franchise marketers love to see what other franchises are up to. And so I wanted to bring in a few slides around what are the technologies that other franchise systems are using. So personalization is an interesting one. And I thought it was interesting to see some of the technology that franchise systems are using for personalization on sites. There's another one, search. I was surprised to see that a lot of franchise systems actually have search plugins on their website. A lot of common names in the search space. So what we're talking about here is you have a baseline CMS that we looked at, but the search within that CMS isn't working for you, and you come in and you get a plugin. One of our own tools, Hawk Search, is actually listed in here. So within the family of Bridgeline, we have several products, and Hawk is actually listed in here. But I just thought it was interesting that so many franchise systems have adopted search plugins as a means to actually increase the search capabilities on their websites. I thought that was neat.
Yeah, and there's actually somewhat of a SEO reason, let's call it, for that, I guess. Because like if you use Chrome, for instance, generally if you start typing a certain website, like Wikipedia is probably the best example. Like if you start typing Wikipedia in your address bar at the top, at one point it will turn into sort of a search functionality, like search in wikipedia.org. Obviously, that same kind of functionality you can create for your own website, and tools like these on screen and probably others will normally out of the box provide that same sort of like flag Google that there is a site search available, and then will help turn Chrome in when you start typing a brand name, like search on their website. So I think it's a very interesting thing to be aware of, especially when you don't have a search yet on your website, or at least not a good one, to take into account. Like it creates some extra functionality for an end user. It's kind of a like a small little hack to get more attention to your brand.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the key, right? That's the takeaway, is what we're showing you here is within the marketing tech stack. There are important plugins, and as you see, we're pointing out the plugins we feel are important, right? Is you don't have to just rely on your CMS, right? You really need to rely on a suite of of products within your tech stack to deliver that experience that incredible experience to the end user. And so site search, personalization, the maps, all of that's important. So, I mean, I'd love to hear, some folks and what their tech stacks are. I love to talk about, tech stacks, and I know a lot of franchise marketers, have inherited their tech stacks, so keep in mind that, the baseline underlying CMS, yeah, that's a big piece of technology, but these are a little easier, plugging in a site search, adding personalization, changing out the map, those are easier lifts. And so I think the real takeaway here is, think about your overall tech stack and what you're doing there. So the next one, analytics, I added in here the fact that we detected analytics on 90% of websites, but I was fairly surprised to see that there were actually some websites within our cohort of in our index that did not have any of these analytics on them. I'm not sure how that's possible, but I think that's some of the low-hanging fruit here, which is, if you don't have different analytics on your website, these are the big ones to think about. Obviously, Google Analytics, Search Console, but there's so much more. Oh, look, Nils, there we go. There's our opportunity to talk about GA4. So I wanted to talk about that too, and this just reminded me of that. So analytics is obviously critical, but we've only got a few minutes left here, and I did want to talk about GA4. So just give us at a high level, Universal's going away, Google Analytics 4 is coming. In fact, let's just start with the critical dates here. How quickly do people need to be looking at understanding the fact that Google Analytics that they know today is actually going to go away, and a whole new Google Analytics is here?
Yep. So the hard deadline is June or July next year. Maybe Google will extend that at one point. We don't know. They've done that in the past with other products too. But let's assume June, July, Universal Analytics won't work anymore. So my suggestion would be, like, now is the time to start installing Google Analytics 4 tags on your website. You can still use both in parallel. So you can still rely on the Universal Analytics dashboards and processes you have within your company. But now is the time to start capturing data into Google Analytics 4 as well, so that you have an as long as possible timeline to compare. Like ideally, but we're already beyond that point, but ideally you'd have a year of data in Google Analytics 4, so that once you start shifting your processes into Google Analytics 4, you can look back for a year, but we're already October now, so that ship has sailed. But I would say, yeah, if you haven't done it yet, today is the day to implement that tag. Again, don't have to use it straight away, but at least you'll get data in. You can start getting familiar with Google Analytics 4, because it's quite different. It thinks of analytics in a different way, where Universal Analytics was mostly page view based. GA4 goes into how like user experiences, users journeys, like how it looks more from a perspective of a user rather than a page, like a hit on a page. And so things will change. Like there's no clear one-to-one path of migrating from one to the other. Some pieces of data will just be different, or will be impossible in GA4 where they were in Universal Analytics, and the other way around. So now is the time to implement it, to get data in, and to then start shifting from one to the other, and learning what's possible, what's not possible, where you need to adapt, where you need to retrain yourself, your teams. We're doing a bunch of webinars on that topic alone too. So definitely tune in. There's a couple of great guests we have on who can go in great depth on how to make the best of Google Analytics 4.
Yeah, well, and check that out. I mean, we've got 10%, of franchises. We're talking about 1,400 franchise systems in the United States, and 10% of them have GA4 loaded on their, have the GA4 code loaded on their website. So there's actually a lot of work to be done there. So I think that's a huge takeaway. I know we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm just going to hit the next few slides pretty quickly here. Again, just some fun information here that advertising, right? Who are you using? Who are franchise systems using for advertising? I thought this was interesting that it's kind of a 30-70 split here that we only found tagging for different ad platforms on just below 30% of websites. And you've got, Microsoft Ad Roll, Twitter, just some great platforms there. But it's interesting to see, again, across those 1,400 websites, what are franchise systems using for advertising. Next one is marketing automation. Love marketing automation. And again, though, not a lot of companies actually have marketing automation tagging on their website. But of course, this pretty much does represent the bulk of the marketing automation, software out there. You got MailChimp and HubSpot and all these great companies. I was just surprised at the fact of of us detecting that on websites, how few websites are actually taking advantage of putting that coding on their website, which is an indication, that they're integrating that, marketing technology into their website and that tech stack. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Now, as a side note, of course, not detected doesn't mean they're not using it. Might be a tool they rolled on their own, like an internal tool that we're not aware of, we cannot detect. Same for the analytics part, by the way, like that 10% that is supposedly not using analytics doesn't mean they don't use it. Might mean that they have something internal that looks at server logs, for instance. But nonetheless, like a good chunk of that section of the bar will probably not use any automation in this case, or analytics.
Yeah. All right. And so last one, what did we? And the A/B testing, which is always amazing technology. Bulk of it is Google optimized, but there's some other fun technology in there. But it's great to see some franchise systems, using A/B testing software, and so that was fun to see. So, well, that's all our findings, and I hope you had some fun with there, and I hope you've got some real nuggets. Please reach out to Nils or I if you've got any questions, and you could actually go to either the TruPresence.com or WooRank.com websites and check out either this benchmark itself, called the Franchise Data Digest, on the TruPresence website, or you could actually run your own free report on the WooRank website. But Nils, this was fun. This whole project has been exciting. So, as you know, I mean, just getting to know you almost 2 years ago and initially asking you, hey, have you thought about franchise? And here we are today with an entire report on how the franchise world is doing. So thanks for everything. Thanks for all your support, and definitely thanks for being here with me today.
Well, thank you both for a great conversation here. And as we are wrapping up, there were a couple things I did want to mention. Nils, actually, Jeremy, do you mind going to the next slide? Nils mentioned this, that we do have a webinar series with WooRank and a couple of really good guest hosts here. And so this is just coming up in a couple of weeks. If you are interested in registering, you'll get an email notification when we are going live. And also in the registration, a chance to ask a specific question for our speakers that you might have for the transition to GA4. So feel free to scan the QR code to register for that webinar. And then one slide farther, we have another TruPresence Talks webinar scheduled for December. And this will be Jeremy interviewing 3 top marketing experts from within the franchise world that will be joined in the very beginning of December. So you can go ahead and register for that as well. And with that, we are at time. Thank you guys so much for just such an informative conversation. And I am sure we will have you both on again soon. All right. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.